Colleagues, it's the appointed time and we have already formed a quorum. So, and after this session, we'll take a break for 10 minutes and then we will resume at 5:25. And I'd like to remind members that with regard to the matters under discussion, if there's any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, then in accordance with Rule 83A, before you speak on the subject, please disclose the nature of your interest. And I'd also like to draw your attention to Rule 84 with regard to the circumstances where there is a direct pecuniary interest and how you should be declaring your interest. First, FCR, bracket 2014-15, close bracket 31A. We will now resume our scrutiny of this paper, which has not been completed last time on the 7th of November. So with regard to the joint debate on the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator, to answer members' questions, we have the following officials. Mr. Wong Kam Seng, Secretary for the Environment, Mr. Howard Chan, DDEP, and Dr. Alan Chan, ADEP, and Mr. Elvis Au, ADEP, and Mr. Lawrence Lau, PEPO, LND. And since we started to discuss the 4 papers 2 weeks ago, some 28 members have already asked questions, and I'll adopt the past practice, that is every member in asking questions, including the officials' reply. The first round will allow for 4 minutes, and then for the second round 3 minutes, and then for subsequent rounds only 2 minutes. And for the questions that are put to the officials, they have to be directly related to the papers. As for policy issues, please raise them at the panel meetings of this council, and we've already rejected 3 members' requests in accordance with the rules of procedure for the FC for adjourning the debate, and in accordance with the rules of procedure, I will not allow any further requests or application for adjourning the debate. And on the 31st of October and the 7th of November, we have already dealt with 2 motions to adjourn the debate right away, and we have already spent some 4.5 hours on these, and another 3.5 hours on dealing with 6 motions. In accordance with the Rule 37A of the Finance Committee's procedures, I've already received Mr. Gary Fan's application in relation to FCL 2014-15-31A. There are 5 motions, and after the joint debate, for motions that are consistent with the rules of procedure, they will be put to the vote by members. And in accordance with Rule 37A, only 1 item in relation to this subject should be raised. That is in relation to the anti-southeast landfill under 31A. And if there are more than 1 motion, I will reject the motion and return it to the member. And after all members have dealt with the motions under 37A, I will put that to the vote, and then in accordance with the same set of procedures, I will be dealing with the remaining 3 items in accordance with the order on the agenda. So first of all, does any member who would like to ask questions but have not yet done so at the last 2 meetings ask questions? Dr. Kwokaki, Mr. Chairman, whether it's landfilling or incineration, this is the worst possible option, and for the residents involved, it's really a bad deal for them. For example, Cheung Kwan O, Fanling, Shangshui, those living in the New Territories, they are adversely affected. In fact, under the blueprint by the administration, there are many things that should have been done, and if you look at what the administration is intending to do, we have no confidence whatsoever that the administration will do that. First, on waste charging, and also recycling and reuse, and also emission reduction and so on. The administration has said time and again that in different districts, in particular for Tuen Mun and Cheung Kwan O, they will have to put up with this for a longer period of time. And yet, if you look at the policies proposed by the administration, there is no clear timetable or roadmap as to how things can be resolved. Yes, you have done a lot of studies and feasibility studies and so on, but then you've never been able to come up with a definitive answer. So I doubt the sincerity of the administration in doing this, and the commitment on the part of the administration. And as the Bureau Director would recall, before the summer recess, we actually sent you invitations to some of those forums, but then you've not attended any one of them. So how sincere are you? So other than meeting with district councillors and stakeholders whom you'd like to meet, so have you really met with the residents who are affected by these facilities? Have you ever talked to them face to face, telling them that you're going to make improvements and what sort of commitment the administration has? You have never done that at all, and now you're coming to this council again. Probably you have got enough votes already. So are you trying to bulldoze your proposal through here, so that you don't have to go back to the district council again? Because so long as you have enough votes in the FC, you can just push through your proposal here, and that would only give rise to more resentment on the part of the residents. All right, the government has been talking about formulating policies which will benefit the community, but then you have not done anything at all to achieve that end. Bureau Director, thank you, Dr. Kwok, for your questions. And if you look at the facts, our blueprint and also the roadmap, all right, in 10 years we're going to reduce waste by 40%, and during the first 2 or 3 years, that's the first stage, we have a dozen or so initiatives. Well, I think what you said was biased. On the other hand, during the past few years, according to our statistics, there were several 100 times, 340 plus times, during which we met with stakeholders, including the district council, relevant trades and industries, and so on. So on many occasions, we have had meetings with them, and we've also been to the Tuen Mun District Council many times, meeting with different quarters and groups in Tuen Mun. We talked to them, and we discussed how we're going to face with these essential facilities in Hong Kong, the 3 landfills and incinerator. We have been doing that in Tuen Mun. We have met with them on various occasions, and that's been widely reported already. All we were trying to do is to reduce the nuisance caused to Tuen Mun. Chairman, I don't think he's answered my question at all. I asked you whether or not you had met with the residents. All right, meeting the district council is one thing, but then have you talked to them directly? So can you just tell us that you have never met with them? Why don't you just come clean on that? All right, with regard to Southeast, the SENT landfill, in fact, we have been to 80 plus meetings, including residents, groups, and so on. We have met with them on various occasions. All right, can you tell us next time as to how many residents you have met with, because Dr. Kwok will be asking that again. Next, Helena Wong, 4 minutes. Chairman, what I'd like to know is about the incinerator. Well, if the incinerator is going to emit certain gas, we are all concerned about the extent of pollution. Yes, so we've been talking about Euro standards, and we have also received concerns expressed by some members of the public. So there is one thing that the Bureau Director might attempt to answer. All right, under the air quality objectives or AQO, so it's not targeting incinerators which will be incinerating some 3,000 tons of waste, which will give rise to or generate a huge amount of pollutants. So in building the incinerator, do we have to come up with a corresponding piece of subsidiary legislation by amending the air quality control ordinance? or do we need to have a new piece of legislation so that in the future, when we are going to incinerate some 3,000 tons of waste a day, so what about the AQO? Would it be that we will simply not be able to achieve or meet that objective? Yes, Mr. Au. Well, under the EIA study for the incinerator, we've already assessed the impact on air quality with regard to Euro standards and also Hong Kong's AQCO. We have already assessed the implications. We can see that we can fully meet those standards, and there is no need for us to amend the legislation, because according to our assessment, we will be able to achieve the most stringent standards of the of Euro, and also it's 3.5 kilometers away from Cheung Chau, so basically the impact on Cheung Chau would be minimal. And if you look at the cumulative pollutants, so it's just about 30% of the required standards. So how are you going to allay the concerns of the public? In other words, in incinerating these 3,000 tons of waste, you may not have sort the waste very carefully. So some residents are concerned that after the incineration, you might be emitting a lot of dioxin and also furan. I don't know how to read that word. So specifically, how are you able to ensure that there would not be any toxic emission and also suspended particulates that would be spreading and so on? So are you able to filter that out altogether? Or is it that you may not be able to filter everything out, but then given the wind direction is not going to go or spread to Cheung Chau? Well, there are several controls. Number one, in terms of the design of the incinerator, we have already adopted the Euro design specifications. In other words, if you look at the emission, we will be able to reduce that to below the Euro standards, and also we have adopted the modern state-of-the-art technology. So basically, the emission would be very clean. So actually, it's not just that it will be able to meet Euro standards; it's far below that as required by Euro. How about other countries? Will they specifically? All right, I'm talking about countries with incinerators. So with regard to the introduction of incinerators, will they also introduce relevant legislation to regulate that? No, basically not, because they would adopt the same standards, and that's Euro standards. And since year 2000, they have already updated that, and basically all countries having incinerators would adopt that standard. Next, I'd like to ask about wind direction. That's in enclosure A. This one, I think your time is up. Okay, I'll wait for the next round. Ms. Sito, third round, 3 minutes. Thank you. At the earlier meetings, Dr. Fernando Jiang discussed the recovery rate with the Bureau Director. This is an open secret. I think during the last term, the recycling rate was 49%, and during this term, the Environment Bureau has been trying its best to face up to the issue. So they've told us that instead of 49%, it's only 38%, and most of it would be waste plastics. So the figures are concentrated in waste plastics, and thank you. And I'm grateful to the media for their investigative reports. Actually, there are some re-export industry, so they are not the green industry. They are actually importing waste from elsewhere, and then they would re-export it back to the mainland. And on the mainland, they have this greeners action. And they've so these standards or the requirements were raised, and as a result, some waste was stuck in Hong Kong. And according to some deputations, all right, some 30% of the plastics will have to go to the landfills because it cannot be disposed of properly by other means. So how are you going to coordinate with the Customs and Excise so that the Customs and Excise will be able to find out what's meant for re-export and what's really waste? And then if the figures or the sums, they cannot do the sums right, then the figures that we're going to get will not be accurate. So, Bureau Director, can you give us more details? And if I don't have enough time, then I'll have to wait for another round. Mr. Au, well, I've already answered this question once with regard to the customs manifestations accuracy or otherwise. Well, for people who do the manifestation, we will have to provide greater or more detailed guidelines. That's about and that's how they are going to do the manifestation with regard to imported waste plastics. Because we have got hold of the figures, and where necessary, we can clarify with them as to why there has been some fluctuation in the figures, and then they can also be asked to give us more accurate data. Ms. Sito, in fact, last time we did invite the customs and excise people to come, but then they said that they did not have a very specific item on re-export waste plastics, or waste plastics for re-export. And if you do not have that item, then there is no way that you can report the figure accurately. So you will have to sort it out with the customs and excise people to ensure that for the re-exporters, they will be able to report accurately. And if they do not comply with the rules, they should also be punished. Mr. Chen, well, for re-exporter waste, all along, we have never checked that, but then we will be asking them not to report the re-export waste plastics. Next, Helena Wong, third round, 3 minutes. Chairman, I asked just now about the incinerator. That's Annex A. And you also have the prevailing wind and 2 arrows. One is to the north and the other is to the east. So I'd like to know. All right, the Bureau Director is telling us that there are only easterly winds and also northerly winds. So how about others? Well, Chairman, in different locations in Hong Kong, the wind direction will be different. That's why we try to get the wind direction for the location that is nearest the facility. And then in different seasons, there would be different breeze direction. And of course, in different there would be different wind direction in different seasons. Well, that would be kind of misleading when I read the document, because if I show this to the students, they would say that in Hong Kong we only have northerly and easterly wind, but then the director just said that in different seasons there would be different wind direction. So in summer, we are going to have southwesterly wind, and then the incinerator is to the south of Hong Kong, is south of Shek Kwu Chau. So you're going to build an artificial island in order to accommodate the incinerator. So the height of the chimney is 155 meters. So will the wind blow it all the way south, and then it will go all the way to Landfill or further north? So I'd like to know the wind direction and also the implication of the wind direction. So what's the actual impact?
Yes, the wind direction, we have a scientific and objective basis for indicating the proportion of wind directions, and the design of the incinerator is up to Euro standards. So regardless of the wind direction, will ensure that the standards can be met. So you have to understand that the wind direction is bound to change during the year, but this is an irrelevant point. No, Chairman, I beg to differ. I challenge you that the arrows are misleading, as if there would be no impact. In fact, we can have southwesterlies as well as northeasterlies, and not just the 2 directions here. And there are rumors that Shenzhen will build 3 incinerators in the short term. Is this true or not? Secretary, are you aware of this? If yes, do you know about the locations of the 3 incinerators in Shenzhen and the prevailing wind directions? And if they are commissioned, what will be the cumulative impact on Hong Kong, taking into account the incinerator within Hong Kong? Ms. Claudia Mode, first round, 4 minutes. Thank you. The controversy over the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator is all because of your failure to convince the stakeholders that you have really reduced waste at source and sort waste properly at source. At least there is no undertaking from you. Down there at the occupied site, we have many green groups there. This morning they asked about refuse collection center in Central. They have been recycling. I mean, they have been sorting their waste themselves. They have placed plastic bottles there. But when the refuse collection vehicle came, they were asked to put the plastic bottles back into the vehicle for landfilling. So they argued a lot. In fact, once you have collected waste in Hong Kong, such as cardboard, it is your own property. And there is also the argument that if an RCV is not filled, it cannot go away, and therefore the plastic bottles must be returned to the vehicle so that it can make the trip. Can you confirm whether this saying is true or not? I know that you have it isn't that you haven't talked about the following points, but can you reiterate your undertaking to Hong Kong? We will do a proper and excellent job in reduction of waste. Secretary, regarding the incident in Central, this is the first time I have heard of it. I'll see whether my colleague has anything to supplement. And for waste reduction, we have a 10-year management blueprint with very clear timetable. Now, if you are really concerned about this subject, you can look at our undertakings in the first 2 or 3 items. We have implemented the program as undertaken. No delay. Well, if the Secretary is just repeating the report, it doesn't matter. I've read it myself. Perhaps his colleague can tell us something about that incident in Central. Dr. Chen. Thank you, Ms. Mo. On your question regarding recycling of plastic bottles, I understand that representatives of students have discussed with NGOs responsible for collection of recycled bottles to ensure that such bottles are not really landfilled. But we can confirm this. Any supplement? No. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, the 4th round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. In 2009 November, the Beijing government announced a voluntary objective for the whole government. By 2020, carbon emission will be reduced by 45%. In Hong Kong, we've also got a consultation document on how to respond to climatic changes. And for reduction in carbon footprint, we have a target of reducing it by 50 to 60% by 2020 compared with 2005. But take carbon monoxide as an example, 720 tons carbon sulfur dioxide for 1,447 tons. I'd like to know whether this facility will make it impossible for us to meet the original target in that action plan, that is to reduce carbon emission by 45% in 2020 compared with the baseline in 2005. Secretary, thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. You referred to carbon intensity. Well, it is entirely different from emission of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide. My question is whether the facility will affect your meeting a target, your plan to meet the target. Would the two have nothing, not related in whatsoever, Mr. Chen? The incinerator has to tackle 3,000 tons of waste, and that will give rise to 660 tons of residue and 240 flying dust. According to the EIA report, it will be dumped at NT West landfill. That would be equivalent to 20% of the amount of waste dumped every day. And for the first 6 months of the operation of the incinerator, there will be intensive testing of the residual access, and if a large amount of heavy metal is not found, then the test will be done only once every 6 months. So I'd like to ask, why should the amount of ashes should be transported to the anti-waste landfill? Why don't you use another technology to reduce the amount of waste? And if they are only tested for the amount of heavy metal contained and a pH value, why should it only be done every 6 months? Can you shorten your question, because you must leave time for the Secretary to answer? Because my time is up, I wanted to ask questions first for the Secretary to reply in the second round. Right, Ms. Sitho, the fourth round, 3 minutes. Thank you. I didn't use up my 3 minutes, really. And Mr. Wong, you talked about not requiring these recyclers to declare at the Customs and Excise, because there is not a category called recycled waste plastic. So they can only declare the source of the waste plastic and its destination. Given that we have a lot of waste recycling going on, there should be a separate category in the declaration form of C and E department that is waste plastic that can be recycled. If not, how can the report be accurate? If there is no reporting of waste plastic or re-exported waste, how can you ensure that it is correct and there can be a penalty for offenders? And the Customs and Excise should keep records. Even though the source is from Europe, as reported, if there is no such category, then it will still be added to the total amount. Because when civil servants from the CNED attended a previous meeting, they claimed that it could be done. Mr. Chen, the local recycling rate will only consider recyclable materials exported out and originated in Hong Kong. For the rest, may I ask Dr. Chen to answer? Dr. Chen, thank you. The EPD, the Customs and Excise, have done a lot of follow-up action, because the person who make the declaration thought that the material was originally from Hong Kong. In fact, it was imported into Hong Kong, and simple processing was done in Hong Kong, although not cutting it into shreds or pellets. So after the simple processing method, the person was taught how to fill the documents properly. And regarding any law enforcement, there is the customs import and export legislation to govern that. So you only consider the source, and you don't differentiate between waste plastic that can be recycled and those that cannot. Quick answer, please. There are 6 categories of waste plastic. If you are exporting these 6 types of waste plastic, there are different codes for them. Mr. James Toh, 4 minutes. Thank you. Well, on Shek Kwu Chau, there is a drug treatment center. The inmates and also the staff are there around the clock. Has the administration overlooked this? I think, Chairman, you suggested that they provide a written answer for us. I think our Secretariat has forwarded the written answer to all colleagues. Or I beg your pardon, I might have overlooked it. Assuming that there are people living there 24 hours a day, 365 days in a year, will that fulfill WHO's requirements? Yes, as said in our written reply, we had a report on health impacts with detailed analysis of the health impacts on residents of Shakuchao and Chanchao, including people who work there, who stay there for short duration and for a longer duration. The conclusion is there won't be any adverse health impacts. The results are in line with the Environmental Bureau's requirements in the U.S. and also the WHO's requirements. I'd like to know which health authority, assuming that you can meet EU standards, which health authority said that even if persons were there throughout the year for the whole day, their health would not be adversely affected. In Hong Kong, the Department of Health is our authority in health issues. So Department of Health has read the report and has come to the conclusion that the report is acceptable. This is already confirmed. Well, all over the world, for such modern facilities, there are some even closer to residential developments. For instance, in Europe, there is one just 250 meters away, and Japan even closer. And still they're able to meet EU standards because they're very stringent controls and design. Mr. James told, well, the emission standards are EU's standard, but for health standards, what standards do we adopt if it is set by us? It's different. Well, we usually adopt the standards by the Environment Authority of the U.S. Mr. James told, does that mean that the U.S. standards are the most stringent in the world, or just of a medium range? Well, the U.S. standards are usually very strict and commonly adopted by European countries and Hong Kong. Now, there are many such facilities in Europe and, as you said, in Japan. How do U.S. standards compare with EU standards? You told us that we can satisfy U.S. standards. So are U.S. standards stricter than that of EU or more lenient? Because for emissions, we use EU standards. How come for health you adopt U.S. standards? Your question is asked. Let them answer. Well, European standards are very similar to the U.S. standards. Can you tell us the parameters? Compare the parameters. Give us a comparison of the parameters adopted by EU, the U.S. and Japan, so that we know whether we have gone for the most lenient or the strictest standards. Yes, I get a question. So please provide a paper in writing. Dr. Hannah Wong, fourth round, 3 minutes. The question I asked just now has not been answered, and that is whether 3 incinerators are planned in Shenzhen and their locations. There is only one in Macau, and we're going to have our own. And what will be the cumulative impact? Ms. Wong, I think that has nothing to do with our item. Still, since you're using your own time, I'll see whether the Secretary is willing to reply. Chairman, I agree that this question is irrelevant to this paper because emissions from incinerators only account for a very small proportion compared to emissions from power generators and transport vehicles and vessels. No, I don't believe so. If there are many incinerators right close to Hong Kong, there will be a cumulative impact on Hong Kong's air quality. Regarding our air quality control ordinance, I'd like to know whether we have any standards for poisonous gases such as dioxin. Mr. Ao, for dioxin, we adopt a EU standard, and that is the emission standard within the chimney. And when we did the EIA report, we also considered the impact on the environment. And here we've adopted standards by other countries, and we are able to fulfill these standards. My question is whether we have standards set. For instance, if the level of dioxin is beyond a certain standard, it will be a breach of the legislation. Do we have such a standard? Well, under our legislation, an incinerator is a designated project, so a permit is required. And in the permit, dioxin is one of the criteria. If the standard is exceeded, then it will be a breach of the air control ordinance, and we can take enforcement action. So you do have the standards. We do. And once the incinerator is commissioned, what will be the regular monitoring of emissions, and how will the information be disseminated? In the statutory permit, the operator has to monitor the levels on a regular basis according to the law, and it has to be reported to the EPD, and it must be published to the public as soon as possible. So we will certainly do it on the website so that members of the public can get the information in the first instance. Dr. Kwakaki, 4 minutes. I asked the secretary a question, and he said that the administration had met many deputations. From 2013, I think the administration could see that opposition was strong from the community, and Mr. Wong and his boss, Mrs. Carrie Lam, promised to go to the community to consult the people affected. For instance, 29th of October and a few days, 29th in September and also a few days in October. I booked a venue, and yet the reply from the CS&U was that you won't be available on all 3 days. So I said, pick a day in the summer vacation, and then neither you nor Carrie Lam was available. So the government could be so selective as to choose only people they like to meet. This shouldn't be the right attitude. How can you expect the public to swallow this? All right, you can check your own correspondences and your diary. We asked you to pick a day you were available, but were you really that busy? What were you doing during the period? Secretary, as I said, in the past few years, we have had hundreds of consultation forums based on these matters.
He just asked you a very simple question. That is from 2013 up to now. How many times have you met with the stakeholders? How come the CS and you couldn't fix the date? I have heard his question twice. Chairman. Well, we've heard different voices, so we really have to look at our schedule and see if we can really pay a visit. So for a few months, you can't even pick one day to meet the Gaifong. I asked you how come you were so busy. Just answer me. Well, for this particular case, we have to handle it in our specific way, but we have tried our best. From August last year up to now, you have never visited those people once. You say that you attach a lot of importance to the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator, and you really share the feelings of the people that are affected, but you have never visited them. This is just a small thing and you can't even do it. You are an accountable official. How can you ask people to swallow it? I ask you once again, from the 23rd of August last year up to now, have you visited any of the districts? Have you seen any of the residents? Any information? Well, I can provide you the information later. We would meet the stakeholders. Well, they are not stakeholders. I'm talking about the residents. From the 23rd of August 2013 up to now, how many residents or resident organizations have you seen? Can you give us the information? I don't have the information right now. Can you provide the information later? Provide it in writing. Well, but we have communicated directly with the people who will be affected. For example, the villagers living in Longkutan village, Parklai village, etc. We met with them frequently, and we have also established a district liaison group, and stakeholders were members of that group. Next round, Mr. Frederick Fong, first round, 4 minutes. I would like to ask the question about paragraph 16. It said that on 2011, on a certain date in 2011, you went to the Sai Kung District Council and you received the support of the Sai Kung District Council. But was there voting on that day? And how about the votes numbers? Can you give me the numbers? Sorry, can you repeat your question? In paragraph 16, you say that you briefed the Sai Kung District Council. You said that most of the people didn't object to the extension of the landfill. So was the voting held, and what was the number of votes cast for and against? Well, for that Sai Kung District Council meeting, no voting was held. It was a conclusion. So how can you quantify that most of the district councillors supported you? You said that there were members that supported you, or it's just the chairman that favored your plan? Well, chairman, well, his conclusion is that, well, there were a lot of discussions that day, and 30 members attended the meeting, and 27 of them expressed their views. Those views were constructive. And most of the members supported the amended landfill plan. Well, because for our amended plan, we reduced the size. It's reduced from 15.6 hectares to 13 hectares, and we agreed that the extended landfill would only receive construction waste. So this was the understanding of the chairman. It was not a result of voting. Yes, you are correct. So I think this cannot be quantified. You cannot say that the majority of the members supported you. And I would like to ask another question. Well, were there members of the district council that objected to this proposal, and what did they object to? Well, some of them thought that the landfill was too close to residential areas. Of course, they were also worried about the odor. But we explained to them that in the future, that only construction waste will be received, so the odor problem will be resolved. So now you are not receiving waste with odor. Now it's still receiving waste with odor, but we said that if the extension plan is approved by the FC of the LegCo, then that landfill will only receive construction waste. So for the waste of odor, what's the proportion that it takes up? Now we're talking about municipal solid waste, and it's about 2,000 tons that's disposed of at the sand landfill. As for FEHD, they are now diverting some of the odorous waste away. Well, most of the waste were transported there by private operators. So what's the percentage? As for the sand landfill, now is receiving over 6,000 tons of waste, and about 20,000 of waste was older. So it's about 1/3. Next, Dr. Kwok Kaki, third round, 3 minutes. Chairman. You've read in the newspaper today. Yesterday at Takuling village, a lot of villagers have already voiced out their opinions. They didn't want the landfill. And Secretary, you are very sincere. Let's not talk about the past. Now, in the coming week, do you have a day that you're available so that you can go to Takuling and meet with the residents that are affected by the landfill? A lot of residents have told me that they welcome you anytime. So I would like to ask you once more. In the coming week, do you have a free day? And I will tell them immediately. They are watching TV right now. This week or next week or what? Any date. This week, next week, the week after next, any date will be okay. Secretary? I don't have my timetable with me. Why don't we do this? Do you really want to meet the Takuling villagers? Well, over the past period, with regard to the residents living there, they are holding a banner outside. They want to see you. I'm not talking about the past with you. Secretary, I have written an article today. I don't want a landfill either. However, we have to be practical. In the short run and medium term, in Hong Kong, we really need 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. I cannot see all the people. I have already written an article and published it, and I've talked about people's aspirations. He asked you whether in the coming 2 weeks you will have some time to meet them. Can you answer him? You are busy because you are doing this, or you just won't see them? Now, we would look at the cases on an individual basis. I think the Secretary has never visited those people, and he does not want to see them either. The Takuling villagers are watching the live broadcast of our meeting. So you are not available on any day. So you just write an article behind closed doors. But the villagers want to see you. They have opinions to express. You don't want to listen to them. You don't have the courage to meet them. How dare you act as our secretary? Mr. Leung Kwok-hong, the secretary says that from August 2013 onwards, he has never seen the residents. Let me ask this question. Whom have you met if you haven't seen the residents? Have you met with one of the bidders of the project? I don't know what company he's talking about. And I have not contacted the prospective bidders. So whom have you met? You have so much time. Have you met any other residents? You haven't been to Takuling. How about Kwat Tau Ling? Well, is this related to what we are talking about, Mr. Leung Kwok-hong? What's the relationship? I'm asking on behalf of other members. You don't have to do that. Just ask your own questions. Other members know how to ask questions. Okay, I'll correct my question. Have you been to Kwat Tau Ling? So you don't have time to go visit Takuling. Your assistants told me that you will meet the stakeholders, but you would do it on a case-by-case basis. So will you will you meet the residents or the stakeholders directly? So are the Darjeeling villagers direct stakeholders, or are they indirect stakeholders? During the past period, we have communicated with the stakeholders of the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. So you're saying that Darjeeling villagers are not stakeholders. We have also communicated with Darjeeling stakeholders. So this is really a weird story. They say that you haven't gone to Darjeeling to meet the residents there. So when did you see the Darjeeling residents, or they just claim to be Darjeeling residents? Mr. Lang Guoheng, just now a member has asked this question. They say that they will be providing us with a supplementary paper telling us what kind of organizations they have met in the past. So if you continue to ask the same question, you will never get an answer. He said that he's met Darjeeling residents. He doesn't know how to answer you anymore. It's just logic. He said that he's met the major stakeholders. He said that a paper will be provided to us later, telling us what kind of organizations they've met in the past 2 years, including the residents. I don't understand. You don't understand is because you are not always here. He cannot answer you right now. He has to go back and check the list. It's not that he does not know. He says that he will be providing us a paper later. Other members have accepted this. Next, Mr. Gary Fan. 5th round, 2 minutes. I've pressed the button for 1 hour, and now I get a chance to ask. Last time I asked about the fees of construction waste being disposed at landfills, and it's low, but the amount of construction waste received is high when it's compared with other advanced economies. In 2011, the total volume of construction waste was as high as 20,000 tons. But if you look at Tokyo, it has 13 million people, and they have 9 million tons of construction waste every year. And for Ontario, it's 1.2 million. As for the capital of Australia, each year is only 200,000 tons. How come Hong Kong has so much construction waste? Is it because the fee is low? Can the Secretary answer this question? Well, let me tell you the facts. For the recycling rate of construction waste in Hong Kong now is almost 94–95%. As for other big cities, well, our rate is not a low one. But if you look at our 10-year blueprint, you can see that in the first 2 to 3 years, we will be conducting a review on construction waste fees. We are discussing with the industry, and there will be an increase in the fees. I asked you how come the amount is so huge. Is it because the fee was so low in the past decade? Didn't you do this to benefit the developers? Secretary. As for Hong Kong's mode of development, can it be directly compared with Tokyo and Ontario? I don't think that's a very objective way of comparison. Mr. Gary Fan, you said that you have waited for 1 hour because other members didn't ask so many rounds of questions as you did. I didn't want you to wait for 1 hour as well. And your remark is not that fair because people will think that you are being discriminated against. Dr. Kwok Kake, 4th round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I hope that the Secretary can give us this information as soon as possible. That is, after August 2013, what kind of people have you met? Did you just meet with the people that share your same views? And also for the Changchao residents, they are very unhappy with your proposed incinerator, and now they are waiting for an appeal. But the government has not waited for the result, and now is already applying for funding. I think this is really dangerous because the government is taking the lead to not respecting the rule of law. You know, the government now always chooses. Sometimes it respects the rule of law, sometimes it doesn't. So it's a matter of respect. You are telling the public to respect the court, but the government itself takes the lead to not doing so. And you take the initiative to disrespect it. Yes, because you do not like the residents' views. When it comes to the rule of law, it is to protect the people without power and money. But the Lang Cheng-yin government has all the money and powers. Well, you are now just venting your grievances. You don't want an answer from the secretary. I need an answer from the secretary. I'm just explaining myself. How come you are doing this? How come you have such a contempt for the rule of law? Well, we are trying to get approval from members so that we can start our tendering exercise, and it will take 2 years. If we wait for the conclusion of the judicial review, then it will take a longer time. Well, for the tendering exercise, it's already an act. Why do you want to do it now? Well, if you look at the records, the project has been deferred for a number of years, and now it's significantly delayed. So that's why we want to catch up. Then you don't have to come to electrical. You want to do it, just do it, and you can just brush aside the views of the residents. I don't accept the government's answer. Next, Dr. Helena Wong, 5th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, I would like to ask a question about the incinerators, paragraph 8. You say that for the facilities, it can turn waste into energy. And there would be surplus electricity. It would be exported. And the amount would be 480 million units. Are you talking to a certain power company? Is it the CLP or the HEC? And is the government going to pay for the grid fee, or the power company will be paying for it?
And how about the 400 million plus units of electricity? So how would that be done? Well, we'll be connecting it to the Landfill grid. And the second point will be in Changsha, from Shekuchao to Changsha. And also for the converters and so on, they would be paid for by the administration. But then we would be doing that in the form of purchase and offer. So after we have got the funding, we'll be discussing with the CLP, and we'll need to have funding for that. In other words, to lay the lines from Changsha to Shekuchao, that will be funded by the administration, and that's not included in the $12.8 billion. No, that's included under 12E of the paper. So with regard to the connection of the pair of the cables, and also the seabed or the underseabed cables, so that's included here. Yes. 2 minutes, 6th round, Emily Lau. Well, we won't be able to finish the questions even after we have asked 100 rounds. All right, residents have asked me about the dust in Wanpo Road. So even if you cleanse the road several dozen times, even if you wash the trees as well, you won't be able to clean it up because the dust will go all the way into the very heart of the trees. So they'd like the administration to identify some permanent cement transfer station so that they can be transported by sea instead of having to rely on Wanpo Road for the whole route, because it's quite a it's quite an irony that you call it Wanpo Road, and also all the refuse collection vehicles will have to be covered and enclosed. And we had a letter from Dr. Alan Chen because on the 22nd of October, we went together with some residents to the landfill to pay a site visit, and then afterwards she wrote to us saying that for the RCV, according to the Environment Bureau, all the contract value was over $20 million or above. All the vehicles will have their tailgate fully covered. But then residents are thinking that they are generating a lot of dust. So can it be transported by sea? Is it possible? Dr. Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you. Well, for the public works projects costing more than $20 million. Well, in fact, for most of the PWPs, they would normally cost more than $20 million. That's why they will have to have a mechanic cover. And then for the site engineers or resident engineers, they would also have to check it. And also the EMSD has also worked very hard in identifying barging points. And starting from September, they will be using the Kitech barging points. And we have been able to reduce the haul trips by 100. Mr. KK Fong, well, according to past bureau directors, they have been giving us a lot of figures. Let me quote some of them. Sarah Liao said that for the landfills in 2011 will be saturated. And then Edward Yao said that that would be saturated in 2013. Now Wong Kam Sing is telling us that it will be saturated in 2015. And then about 6 months ago, they issue a press report saying that for the Cheung Kwan No landfill, with regard to the spare capacity, well, every year they will be using a certain amount of space, and then that would be full in 2018. So which year is correct? So is it that in terms of the space that can be used, and also the time by which it will be saturated is just an arbitrary figure? Dr. Chen, with regard to our estimate on when the landfills will be saturated, we have to do some calculation. We have to look at population growth, economic growth, and also the effectiveness of our waste reduction efforts, and also together with the space reserved in the landfills for waste and how much waste is coming into the landfills, and also the extent of compaction, because if you're able to compact it further, there might be more space, and that's in the formula of calculation. And as I said repeatedly on previous occasions, every year, on average, we're talking about some 1.7 to 1.9 million tons of waste. And if the average is 1.8 million, then we are just talking about a very moderate increase in terms of MSW. We have not actually factored in the growth in construction waste. And if we have to do that, then as the paper says, by 2015, we expect that to be saturated already. Yes, KK Fong, well, if you look at the historical facts, all the bureau directors got it wrong. So they never got it. They never got it right. So whenever they make an estimate, it's always wrong. So by inference, we can also say that the incumbent bureau director would also get it wrong. Is that right? Bureau director, this is a hypothetical assumption. Well, our blueprint and roadmap to waste reduction has to be achieved in an orderly and gradual process. KK Fong, he hasn't got any objective facts to show that his assumption stands. But then if you look at history, well, all the bureau directors would just come up with arbitrary statements without taking up the responsibility. That's why can we assume that he's just doing that again? Well, by the time you say that again, we're going to have a new bureau director. So are you going to continue like that? I think you're really very smart, Chairman. So, bureau director, can you confirm what he said was right? Well, I never said anything. I think the chairman just spoke my mind. So, do you have another set of figure? Bureau director, chairman, as my colleague just said, there's a scientific basis for calculating the spare capacity of the landfills. That's all. Bureau director, if we are not convinced, then is it that one of the factors is that you have not been able to convince members to support you because you have not able to justify everything? Mr. Chen, well, I think Dr. Chen has already given you the scientific basis. But then if you've been to the landfills, then you see that, well, the landfills are already full. And by the time when it reaches the peak, it's already very close to the top of the hill and is full. So you can see that our estimate is accurate. Mr. Alan Leung asking in the third round, 3 minutes. Chairman, after listening for such a long time, you can see that our questions are raw, focused on waste reduction, recycling, landfilling, and incineration. So it's about the government's estimate, and also the means to achieve the end. Is that based on reliable data, and is their estimate accurate? So that's the basis for our questions. I think last week we also quoted an example is about the recovery and recycling of waste plastics in order to show that the government's estimates were not accurate at all. So my question is, in order to get the support of this council, has the bureau director considered this? With regard to the 3 landfills and the incinerator, can you separate them, and can you scale it down? For example, for the end stage treatment, will you be able to reduce waste, and then you can recycle and reuse more? And then for the time being, you will just be expanding Takuling and Tuen Mun's landfills to a very low extent, and then in 3 years' time, you review the situation before taking the matter further. So this is a one step at a time approach, and also you will then be able to base your further decision on the updating of data. So will that be easier to get the support of this council? Bureau Director, well, Chairman and Mr. Leung, in terms of the expansion of the 3 landfills, the Cheung Kwan O and also Takuling landfills, relatively speaking, the scale of expansion is not very substantial, and the extended years of use will not be very long. That's why we are not going to break it down further. But then when we discuss that with Tuen Mun, because if you look at the expansion of Tuen Mun, is relatively larger when compared to the other 2. That's why we will be monitoring the progress of waste reduction and recycling before we decide on the extent of expansion for Tuen Mun. So that's what you suggested. But then it all boils down to the fact that in Tuen Mun we have more room to maneuver. That's why we'll be able to do what the honourable member just suggested. Mr. Leung, so is his answer he will not be able to change the strategy in getting funding from this council? I think you should have redesigned it, and then you should have come back and tell us that we'll be monitoring the figure in 3 years' time with regard to waste reduction and recycling rate, and then you decide on the way forward. Should that have been the case? Bureau Director, to be more pragmatic, well, for the 2 landfills, the Cheung Kwan O and Takuling landfill, if you look at the area of expansion and also the usable or the serviceable life is relatively short, and therefore, technically speaking, it's very difficult to implement if you break it down further. But then for Tuen Mun, we're talking about over 200 hectares of land, so there would be more room to maneuver, and then we can respond to what you just suggested. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yen, 2 minutes in the 5th round, so I'll have to be very quick. Well, for Cheung Kwan O, you only have construction waste. But then all along, the reason why we have generated so much construction waste, that's because the contractors, the developers, they have not done their job properly. And the fee charging system or scale is that you're charging them only $100+ per ton. Why has it been the case? Why are you not recovering the cost from them? Why are you resorting to landfilling in resolving this problem? And if you do not recover the cost from them, are you actually subsidizing the contractors and the developers so that they would generate the construction waste and then they would hand it over to the administration, and then you will have to dump it in Chiang Kwano? I think Chiang Kwano residents have a bad time, because in the past they used to have this expectation, that is, after putting up with the bad smell and this period, the landfill will be closed and then everything will be good again, so that they would not have to put up with the dust and also the odor problem. But now you're going to expand it. So can you tell us whether or not you have alternative strategies in order to reduce construction waste? Bureau Director, in Hong Kong, construction waste would mainly come from government's public works. It's not from the private sector. And in terms of the construction waste fee charging, yes, it's on the low side, but then in terms of recovery and reuse of construction waste, it's over 90%. And if you have to increase the fee further in order to reduce waste further, in fact, there is a limit as to how far we can go. That's why please do not overestimate it. But then we will further reduce the generation of construction waste. That's very clearly spelled out in the blueprint. Well, so can you tell us the cost and what's the gap between the cost and also the fee being imposed, Dr. Chen? Well, in 2013-14, well, the fee being charged at landfill is $191 per ton, 191 per ton, and that's the cost. And how much are you charging them? 125. So you're actually subsidizing $770 plus per ton, right? Yes, correct. So that's the figure that you try to get. Next, KK Fong, third round, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on the points that we just asked. This year, Dr. Alan Chen told us upon questioning, that is by the end of 2013, there was some 540,000 or 5.4 million square kilometers of land, and if you look at it from 1.8 million tons a year, then you're actually talking about 3 years. So by 2016, it's going to be saturated. Is that right? Correct. So Dr. Alan Chen, the Assistant Director, PWSC 99/1314, that's a electrical paper. So she made that remark in that paper. So that paper already gave a big slap on the face. So you already got it wrong in 2009. So why don't you have a fight between yourselves before you come back and tell us again? Well, we have already explained that on different occasions. We have also explained that at the PWSC with regard to the 5.4 million cubic meter of waste. We expect that to last some 3 years. And as I just said, we would expect that there would be some growth in the waste volume. That's why in 2015 we expect that to be saturated. Anything to add from you, Mr. Bureau Director? KK Fong, number one, I do not trust their estimate. That's why. Well, can you bet with your post? And if there is any spare capacity, you resign. As you understand it, we cannot just put it to a gamble. You cannot just bet on it. Well, Bureau Director, can you promise that if the figure is wrong, then can you promise that you would step down if you get it wrong? Dr. Chen, would you like to respond to that question? No, there is no need for me to respond to that. This is a mistake, because if you got it wrong, then you would be misleading members. So can I put it on record? I'd like to ask that she steps down if she gets it wrong again. All right, with regard to this project, well, in 2015 you're going to start it, and it will last for about 2 years. In other words, in 2017 you're going to complete the expansion. So I'd like to know, well, in 2015 the landfill will be full. You will no longer be able to use it. So between 2015 and 17, there should be no landfill going to Tseung Kwan O. Is that correct? That's why the Bureau Director has been saying that we have an urgent need of expanding the landfill. With your support, I'd just like to know, is it that there will be no waste going to Tseung Kwan O during the 2 years? No. Well, with the item approved by members as soon as possible, we can ask the private collectors to come, and then we'll be able to delay the saturation time so that in terms of our procurement, that can be completed in time, and there is no need for us to close it right away. Well, please give a chance to answer the question. But then Mr. KK Fong says that if scent is passed, then other than construction waste, nothing will go to that landfill, so you will have less waste going there. But then if they are not able to do it, indeed, that would be saturated faster. Next, Gary Fan, 6 rounds, 2 minutes. Thank you. Bureau Director, I'd like to go after the construction waste quantity because it's exorbitantly high. You said that it would be difficult to reduce it further, but then our international experience should be taken on board. Hong Kong is not so unique that in terms of waste charging and everything else, we can afford to be very different from other advanced economies. And you promised, you said that you would be reviewing that, but then you would also, well, the residents are particularly concerned, in particular for landfills. There is no timetable as to when you're going to close it and when you're going to complete everything. Because if you're able to do the first, then you will have the timetable, and then you also have the power to execute it, and you can also determine the time when it will be closed. And I think if you had been able to do it, it would be easier. It would have been a lot easier for you to buy the residents in. But then you have not done that at all. So can you tell us more specifically with regard to waste charging, what's the review timetable? Will you be able to answer that? About waste charging, because they are linking the waste charging scale with the cost. Well, if you can see the 10-year blueprint, it's been set out very clearly with regard to review of construction waste charging. All right, in 2014-15, we're going to review that. That's the top priority. We'll be talking to the sectors and the stakeholders, and we have started that. We hope that we can complete that next year. Why can't you wait till after the completion of the review before you seek funding from this council for the expansion of the landfill? That would be a more convincing way of doing it, because you'll be able to reduce waste at source. Because for a long time, the administration has not been able to do it at source. That's why you have to expand the landfills incessantly. Well, we've been talking about waste reduction and recovery and recycling. We are to do it for 10 years, 20 years, but then we have to be more realistic, because given the objective circumstances, we have to do it gradually and progressively. I think the blueprint is very clear.
Next, Mr. Gary Fan, you've already spent your time. Mr. KK Fong, the 4th round, 3 minutes. I'll continue with my follow-up. The figures show that the government was wrong and contradictory. The director said that 1/3 of the waste will be sent to sand, and now we're told that sand will not be full by 2015 because we can put less there, and it can be extended to 2017. That means that even 2017 is flexible. According to the paper, by 2015 the landfill will be full. So it's just something that you can manipulate. This figure you can manipulate. We're told that if the papers are passed, then its lifespan can be extended to 2016-17. Because if you should not even dump a single piece of refuse at sand. So, as explained, if MSW can be diverted from our landfills earlier, then the lifespan of our landfills could be prolonged. If this is an objective fact you can understand. So, according to Dr. Chen, if we don't do that, then the landfills will be full by 2015. You can't say that we are not being clear with our figures. About 1/3 of our MSW, they take up about 1/3 of the refuse dumped at landfills. If they can be diverted, then our landfills can last longer. But even if you use March as a cutoff date, you only have 15 months left. So 1/3 is odorous refuse and 2/3 are non-odorous. But even without that 1/3 of odorous waste, you are saying that the landfill can last until 2017, even though there is only 1/3 less. How is it possible? The figures do not tally. Mr. Lau, only 1/3 of the space will be vacated. 1/3 of the space can last for 3 years? When Center Landfill will only accept C&D, if we will only accept C&D waste only, it can be extended for 3 years. Does 1/3 of the space can last for 3 years? Well, if we will only accept C&D waste, which has a higher density, each ton of C&D waste take up a less amount of space. That means more can be accommodated. And if the papers are approved, we'll discuss with contractors to see whether, taking into account a settlement, we can lump the refuse higher at our landfills. And as Dr. Zhang said, we will discuss with the contractor. We will shorten the term of contract, hoping that we can do it. So, Mr. Feng, you've asked this for a number of times. Now, when they want us to approve the funding, they will say that by 2015, the landfills will be full. And if you can give them money, they can make it last until 2017. You have been trying to show that they are being contradictory. Well, there is no need to do so because it's the government's usual practice. What figures they quote depends on what they want to achieve. I think you've already bring out your point. There is no point in pursuing longer. Well, different departments have different needs. Well, if they are urgent, they will say that it will be exhausted soon. If not otherwise. Mr. Emily Lau. Well, you have so many sound bites. I think the best is not about this group of officials. Rather, you said, well, you are like the LCSD. You are always beating around the bush. So you have so many quotable sound bites. I hope they will not ramble about and come to the answers more directly. All right, I'll return that 20 seconds back to you. I hope Dr. Zhang would not really lead us around the garden. In fact, they have followed your arguments very closely. You talk about 100 trips per day. They say that is only 8% of the vehicle trips going to Wanpo Road. So they really want you to find more piers so that refuse can be transported by sea. And for projects that cost around $20 million, I'd like to know how many of them are not going to Wanpo Road, leading to so much fugitive dust. 100 trips less. Well, according to the CNED, about 1,300 to 1,400 trips are going to our landfill bank per day. Well, so there will be a reduction of 100 trips. They want to reduce a further 100 next year, and they are working very hard to identify barging areas in our district. But it's not easy because they must get consent of district councils first. Regarding projects that cost over $20 million, there are many government projects going on. What goes to Zhangguo, what goes to Tumun, I'm not sure. I don't have the figure with me. And all these vehicles must be properly covered, but perhaps it has not always done properly. But whenever spotted, our colleagues at landfills and banks will ask them to do a better job. But they talk about joint operations. Between January and September, they had 29 operations, so 3 per month. How can that be effective? Even if you do it 3 times a day, it won't be sufficient. The situation is very serious. Are you aware of it? The relevant colleagues will continue to step up prosecution and tell the industry and construction sites in charge. Ms. Amina, you have a few seconds left. No. These departments, well, there are the police, FVHD, and EPD involved. They have to catch these vehicles on the road. Why can't you regulate these vehicles better so that they will not break the rules and residents do not have to inhale so much dust? Why can't you do a better job so that we can support you? Dr. Zhang, are you aware of the problem? Dr. Zhang? Well, if a vehicle is not properly covered when emerging from a construction site, it will then breach our air quality dust regulation. They will be prosecuted. There have been 1 prosecution for 4 offenses. All right, your time is up for this round. Please wait for the your next round. Mr. Ho, 2 minutes. I think the greatest discrepancy in view between myself and the secretary is once MSW is out of a household, the government should promote green industry and to create jobs as well. So we have always asked for $2 billion to develop recycling industry. However, the secretary always thinks that sorting should be done by households inside their flats. But we've been to Scandinavian countries and we saw an incinerator where there was once an explosion and fire, and which went on for quite a while. If there is no trained sorting after households have dumped their MSW, how can you ensure that this will not happen? Because there may be cans with compressed gas and battery inside such refuse, and if they find their way to our incinerator, it can be very dangerous. Mr. Wong, dangerous goods is chemical waste, and it has to be treated according to our law by our chemical waste treatment center. And now we are talking about MSW, municipal solid waste from households. They have to go through 3 transfer stations before they can reach our incinerator. All these are managed by the EPD, and the first gatekeeping is for us to check whether there are such items. And then at our incinerator, there will be internal work procedures so as to prevent this from happening. Dr. Fernando Zhang, 2 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I mentioned an academic paper delivered or published in Waste Management, which is an international periodical. I talked about a construction waste disposal charging scheme. The fees collected should be used for an incentive to encourage developers to improve their building techniques so as to reduce construction waste. However, according to the study, the effect of the scheme was minimum. Construction waste was only reduced by around 5%. So the paper suggested that we follow the practice of other countries by increasing charges. I'd like to ask, what is the EPD's response to such a study? Dr. Fernando, perhaps you were not here. I think they answered a number of times that in 1514 they're going to review the fees and charges. Well, I haven't read your report. It was said by the administration that now over 90% of the construction waste is being recycled, and most of them have come from government projects instead of the private sector. Now, since a number of members have asked the same question, I think you're repeating the questions. But since we're not here, maybe you don't know. I hope they can start the review as soon as possible, because is already published in an international journal that the current scheme is not effective. So shouldn't they do the review earlier? Secretary. In the first few years, the charging scheme has cut the amount by over 10%. This is very scientific, but still we have just started the review. Mr. Lee Chut-Yan, the sixth round, 2 minutes. Going back to the question of construction waste, you would like to talk about the review so many times, but the question is the financial incentive. $191 and $125, there is a difference of $66. So you are subsidizing 1/3 of the cost, almost. I have yet to hear your explanation. Why is this financial incentive not working? If you raise the charge to $191, would you agree that it will be an incentive for developers to improve their performance? Why is it that you find it meaningless to increase the charge to $191? Well, even if it is meaningless, you should still do it, because in many other things, you talk about cost recovery, and yet for construction waste dump at landfills, you do not recover the full cost. Secondly, can you tell us why this incentive is not enough? Mr. Lee, I'm not saying that this is not an incentive, but looking at the current situation, recycling of construction waste is over 94%. This is a fact. Yes, raising the charges may marginally increase the percentage, but there is not too much room for improvement, in fact. And we always say that we adopt a polluter pays principle, because, and that's why we are reviewing the charges. We hope that with a review in charges, we will create a greater financial incentive for developers to do a better job. Well, although you say that you do not differ from me in terms of views, how come you're not doing that? Ms. Ellen, 3 minutes. If you look at the government's action plan, look at the blueprint for sustainable use of resources, you share my view that a lot waits to be done. For instance, you should have legislation to control the use of our landfills, our incinerator, and you should set up a monitoring body with real powers, and you should gradually raise the landfill charges for construction waste, for instance, from $125 to $1,000, and stop subsidizing developers. And the MSW charging scheme, it should be implemented as well. And also the producer responsibility scheme, and even for the recycling bins, some groups are saying that the ratio between recycling bins and rubbish bins should be 1:1. You should suit the needs of the future development of Hong Kong. I think it would be better if we take a gradual approach that is better than making a big jump. Because if your assumptions are wrong or estimate is wrong, perhaps we might have spent our money in not a very wise manner. And once money is spent, there is no turning back. And for the landfill, you are saying that the proposed extension is already the minimum possible. Can't you further downsize the extension? Is it true that the proposed size here is already the minimum and you cannot cut it down further? I always think that it is better for you to make small moves rather than a big jump. Mr. Leung, you've asked this question for the third time, but I haven't got an answer. I think they have. They've talked about the size of landfills and what can and cannot be downscaled. I think they haven't given you the answers you want. They haven't shown you the indicators. All right, ask him to let him answer, okay? You have to look at the situation in other metropolis. Take Europe and South Korea and Singapore as an example. They should maintain a landfilling capacity of a few decades. That's their standard. Now, for Zhangguanou and the North NT, the capacity is just a few years, and the other one a little bit longer, more than a decade. So our proposed extensions are already gradual and rather restrained. So the North will be a smaller one, and so we're not going to phase its development. For the remaining two, they can be phased. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, I asked about the treatment of residual excess. The incinerator is going to produce 9,000 tons of residual ashes, and I also like to ask about the test for heavy metal. I'll try and my colleague can supplement. Mr. Chen asked whether we can use an alternative technology to reduce production of residual excess. Now let me say that for other types of technology, members have also visited incinerators in other countries. The technology is not mature enough for application in Hong Kong. We use this moving grade incineration technology. It may generate ashes, but we have two checkpoints. First is safety monitoring, and second, we'll see whether some of the ashes can be reused so as can be reabsorbed so as to lower our reliance on landfilling. Mr. Au. Well, flying ashes and fugitive ashes will be poisonous, but they will be treated. They will stabilize with cement, and after testing to ensure that they fulfill our standards before they will be released. And for residual excess, they are not poisonous at all. And in places like Asia, they're being used for construction materials.
How about heavy metal? Is it toxic? As for heavy metal, it can only be found in the flying ashes, but it has already been stabilized by cement, and it will have to reach a certain standard before it can be disposed of. Mr. James Tan, Chairman, last time I asked a question, and it's about paragraph 5. The government says that for the now they are extending the landfill, and the waste volume will be reduced by 40% in the coming years. Now, in the coming few years, there are a lot of plans to build residential flats, and there will be an increase of 60%. However, on the contrary, the waste can be reduced by 40%. The government told me last time that there was new technology for construction. I asked my friends in the construction industry, is there such a new technology to do this? Well, in the past, we used traditional methods. You bend the bar first, and then you board it up, and then you pour in concrete. And afterwards, you have a lot of construction waste. Now you're talking about a new technology. But my friends in the industry said that they haven't heard of such a new technology. Of course, in other countries, there are construction methods are very different. They don't have scaffoldings. And in Hong Kong, we are still relying heavily on scaffolding. Otherwise, the construction costs may shoot up. So can the government tell me what this new technology is? Is it available in Hong Kong, and is it much more expensive? Mr. Tian, Chairman, I would like to clarify. Now, for the 10-year waste reduction target by 40%, we are talking about household waste and industrial waste. As for construction waste, we have to look at the development cycle. So it's not included in the 40% reduction because it's related to the number of construction projects. But of course, there are still methods to reduce construction waste. For example, financial incentive. The disposal charge is now does not fully recover the cost now. So in the future, there may be a change. And also in these few years, there have been a lot of government construction projects. We already have circulated some internal documents. We encourage construction waste to be reduced. As for waste reduction in the private sector, I think Mr. Tan is also an expert in this area. For example, now some exterior walls are glasses, but not concrete. So that can also help in the reduction of construction waste. So if we can use more prefabricated components and parts, this would also help in the reduction of waste. So on one hand, we will be revising the disposal charge, and on the other hand, there will be other supplementary measures, and by doing so, construction waste can be reduced in Hong Kong. Mr. James Tan, do you want to follow up? Now, this is related to Tseung Kwan O, but Tseung Kwan O residents have heard that MSW will be reduced in the area. So have you told them that the 1,000 trips will be reduced, or will there just be a reduction in food waste? Can I use my next 3 minutes? Secretary, please answer swiftly. Well, last time I said that now there are about 1,000 trips a day to Tseung Kwan O landfill. If there's no household waste, it will be reduced by 50%, so about 500 trips. As for construction waste volume, we will have to look at the whereabouts of the projects. If they are closer to Tseung Kwan O, the waste will be disposed of at Tseung Kwan O. So if household waste is not disposed of there, or if only construction waste is disposed of there, there will be a reduction in trips. Well, they are talking about using barges, so trips will be reduced. Mr. James Tan has pressed the button again. So this is your third round, 3 minutes. Chairman, I would like to ask the question from another angle. For the Cheung Kwan O landfill, now you're going to extend it. Has the government promised the residents there anything, or you just ask them to let you extend it anyway? I've heard from the residents, they said that when Mr. Dong Chi-hua was the CE, he said that the landfill will only last for 10 years, but now it's 10 years plus 10 years. And if this CE wants another 10 years and the next CE wants 10 more years, then it will be very long. So can you check the record whether there was a promise of 10 years and now are you promising the Cheung Kwan O residents anything? Now, if the landfill is to be used for another 10 years and that would be the end, or if there's a new government, then there will be another extension. I think other members have also asked this question. That is whether there is a deadline, and when will the use of the Cheung Kwan O landfill terminate. So the Secretary has never answered. Can you now answer this question? I would like to clarify. Previously, we have talked about this. Now, for the extension of the 3 landfills in the past 10 years, the government has made it very clear that they would have to look at the need of the whole society. So the past 2 governments have also made it clear that the landfills might have to be extended to meet the needs of society. And at the end of this year, we will start a study on waste reduction. That is, in the long run, can we handle our waste without resorting to landfill? If we can do that, then we can meet the needs of society. Okay, what if you cannot do it? Well, you say that if it can be done, then there will be no more landfills. But what if it cannot be done? And will Cheung Kwan O landfill be closed? Is there a date? As for household waste, is a very practical problem. Some overseas countries are moving towards this direction. That is, they hope that household waste would not be disposed of at landfills anymore. But this would take a very long time. It's not just about a few years. Well, there may be potential technologies that would be able to take care of this. We want to meet the needs of the people, and at the same time, we also want to achieve the goal of not putting household waste in landfills anymore. Well, Hong Kong is a densely populated city. We have to handle the problem of waste very carefully. Check Secretary. Mr. James Tan and other members have asked the same questions. That is, whether the landfill will be closed one day. They are not talking about zero household waste at landfill. He's asking you about Cheung Kwan O, not other landfills. Is there a timetable for closing it? Can you tell them, is there a date that the Cheung Kwan O landfill will be closed? Because members have been pushing for an answer. For the third paper 31A, paragraph 9, you can already see this. Well, for the extension of Sands landfill, it will be used for another 6 years, but you will have to look at the future developments, for example, the efficiency of waste reduction, etc. There will be changes. What do you mean? Will it be used for another 30 years? People are asking you these questions, but you have always refused to answer. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 3 minutes. I would like to ask about the incinerator at Shek Kwu Chau. As far as I understand, the incinerator will be burning household waste, and the household waste will not be sorted beforehand. I have two questions. When I look at the relevant information, when I look at other countries' incinerators, it seems that they would do some kind of sorting before incineration. So for this incinerator, will you sort the waste beforehand so that energy efficiency can be ensured and pollutants can be reduced? And also by sorting waste, you can also recover some useful resources. And after incineration, of course, there will be ashes. And where will you put the ashes? Will you be dumping them at the existing 3 landfills, or will you be disposing of them at other places? Otherwise, the 3 landfills would never be closed, because ashes may have to be put there. Secretary, I'll answer the first part of the question. In Hong Kong, now the recycling rate is about 40%. It's similar to the UK and France. Now, this is not related to the issue of whether emission will affect health. Well, some materials cannot be burnt properly, so it will affect the efficiency of incineration. For example, glass. So now we are trying to promote the polluter pays project. So this will enhance the efficiency of the future incinerator. As to where the ashes will be put, well, they will be divided into 2 types, flying ashes and recovered residues. After solidifying them and after making sure that they are not toxic, they will be put at a landfill at Nim Wan. As for the residual ashes, we will encourage reuse. We are encouraging research institutions to do more research in this area so as to make better use of the residual ashes. Mr. Leung Kwok Hong, 2 minutes. Well, that's a lady called Margaret Chen, and now she's working at the WHO. She's known as the Chicken Chen because she said that she ate chicken every day. It proves that eating chicken was safe. And you talked about incinerators in Denmark. You say that residents living in its vicinity are not afraid. So can you build a number of incinerators between Upper Albert Road and Lower Albert Road, so the CE can show people that he's not afraid of incineration? Why do you have to build it elsewhere? Why can't you build it at the mid-levels? Leung Sing, can I build one near your home? Where do you live? Can you talk to me, Mr. Leung Kwok Hong? You don't ask other members questions. So why don't you build an incinerator in an area where the rich lives? And where do you live, Secretary? Secretary, where do you live? Build one in your district. I think we have to be objective. When you look at an incinerator, it needs a huge size. For example, Shakucha needs tens of decades. We need a size, the area of the Convention Exhibition Center, and also you need transport network. So it's not about the district, it's about the environment, whether you have such a big site or not. Do we have such a big site in the downtown of Hong Kong? Definitely not. How about the Tamar Park? Is it big enough? So that the government can know what incineration is. Can you answer me? How about the theme park? And also the PLA can enjoy it. Miss Sit-Ho, 6th round, 2 minutes. Chairman, I was not going to ask this question, but you asked this question, so now I want to ask it again. It's about the Tseung Kwan O landfill. Now, you are extending it to 43 hectares. Now, if you are successful this time, can you really make full use of the landfill and then give us a deadline? The Secretary said that the responsibility would have to be shared by all. Now you're talking about 43 hectares. If you fill up the 43 hectares, for example, in a year or so, because we have calculated for you. So why can't you give us the ultimate timetable? Just now, a colleague has answered this question. As for the speed of using landfills, we would have to look at a lot of factors. For example, where are the projects, construction projects in Hong Kong? If they are near Tseung Kwan O, then the waste will be disposed of at Tseung Kwan O. The government cannot control it. So we would just look at the history and then we will roughly estimate the duration of the landfill. But there would be flaws. How about the other choice that I mentioned? Now, if you can do this extension, then why don't you dump a lot of waste there quickly? Then the landfill can be filled in a very short time. Why can't you tell us a timetable? I have also asked the question, but he still doesn't want to give us an ultimate timetable. Ms. Sit-Ho, well, this is your time. You only have a few seconds left. Maybe let's ask the Secretary again. Chairman, as for household waste, well, there are some other facilities, for example, interchange station. So for construction waste, it cannot be compared with household waste. Mr. Gary Fan, this is the 8th round, Chairman. I would like to ask about Rule 39. That is, I would like to propose an adjournment because members have asked the Secretary numerous questions, but he failed to give us concrete answers. And this is a very controversial issue. That's about the 3 landfills and 1 incinerator. I think we should adjourn the meeting now. Our first session will end at 5:15. Well, let us take a break of 10 minutes now, and then we will deal with Rule 39. Let's come back at 5:25.